Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.
Hola a todos, bienvenidos. We are in, of course, the Ilia Topurias era, but we are still the Combat Sports UK MMA podcast. Delighted to be joined this week by Nathan Shields. Nathan, how are you, mate?
All good, matey. All good. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. It's myself, Taylor Collard, here, and we're obviously here to break down a very dramatic, very good, I thought, card. UFC 298, Topuria versus Volkanovski. Where do you want to start, mate? I mean, obviously with the main event, but what part do you want to start with? Volk? Do you want to start with Topuria? Where do you want to go?
I suppose we should jump in on 298 straight away, but I mean, do you want to quickly touch on the UFC 300 main event?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely, mate. Yes, let's do that.
So, thoughts being, for me, I think I predicted that this might be one of the fights that ended up here, and I think I picked this as being the headliner. I could be wrong. I'll double check my notes, so John will let me know if not.
You carry on.
But I'm sure I did. And you know what, mate? I think it's a good fight. I think it's a real good fight. But I think this should be a lesson to Dana White. Do not set expectations too high, because it's a massive fight that feels a little bit like a disappointment. And the reason I say that is Dana's talked about we've got something phenomenal in the works. We've got, we're working on some serious things. I've got 2 more fights to announce. We've got this, we've got that. The way he built this fight up into being something it was never going to amount to. There was people talking about Brock Lesnar taking on Tom Aspinall. There was talks about Khabib coming back and GSP and all this sort of stuff. And the reality is we've got the champion of what I would say is possibly the lowest talent pool division in the UFC at light heavyweight, taking on the number 1 contender. That to me is not a massive UFC 300 fight. There's actually fights on that card that I'm far more interested in. Now, star power wise, I think Alex Pereira's definitely built a bit of a cult following, and Jamal Hill is definitely going to be going into this as the villain, which I think is a role he'll play exceptionally well.
Yeah.
And I do think it's got all the potential to be an absolute belter of a fight, but I just felt like the UFC community as a whole was a little bit underwhelmed as that being the main event.
Yeah, I can agree. That sentiment's definitely out there, right? And I feel like, I put in our groups the other day that we recorded this podcast when, our 300 podcast, what was it, the second week of January, maybe something like that. So that's just how long, that six weeks is a long time in MMA, right? As we all know, and I feel like you've hit it in the nail on the head that Dana White has set the expectations far too high. The only thing that's come to fruition that he said was that you are going to be blown away by the first fight of the night. Absolutely, Davison Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt is the first fight of the night. What I've read, that is an incredible fight to kick it off. No, it shouldn't be. There are definitely fights that should be, but
it shouldn't be. It should be way further up the card.
Yeah, totally.
With all due respect, when you've got Bo Nickel and Cody Brundage fighting on there, Davison Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt, 2 former world champions, going head to head, that needs to be higher up the card. You know what I mean? Against the prospect that hasn't really done anything as yet, and a very mid-level fighter in the UFC, with all due respect to Cody Brundage. So there's a lot about the card and the positioning of everything that doesn't sit quite right with me. The card itself has been billed as being one of the best ever. I think as a card, it's phenomenal. I think it is. There's some absolutely brilliant matchups on there. I just think, I'm more interested, just to give an example, I'm more interested in Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint Denis than I am Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira.
Yeah.
As a fight, I'm actually more interested and more intrigued by that. So, and that's not the main event of 299. You know what I mean? It's a little bit like I'm a little surprised at it, if I'm honest. I think we've seen Jamal Hill saying that it was only talked about or given to him sort of on the Friday.
Yeah.
And then it was announced. And to me, that says either they were working on something else that just never came off. I mean, I'm surprised. And I think there's a big problem at the UFC right now with Dana and Conor McGregor. Because
Seems.
let's be honest, there was the USADA thing and this, that, and all the rest, and USADA is not a part of the UFC anymore. So how are we in a position where Conor McGregor is not headlining UFC 300? I just don't understand it, or at least being a part of the cards. I mean, Conor's not going to play, the co-main or anything else to anybody,
No.
title or not. But how are we in a position where we haven't got A, John Jones, or B, Conor McGregor, or, a massive heavyweight title fight, whether that be Tom Aspinall in the interim taking on Stipe, or it could have been anything. But
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit disappointed by a fight that I'm actually really excited about. Because it's just been billed as being something it was never going to live up to the hype, unless it was GSP, unless it was Khabib, unless it was, Izzy Pereira or something like that. Even I'd actually probably be more interested in Izzy Pereira than I am Jamal Hill Pereira. When we're talking about name value, at least, Izzy Pereira has a much better stamp on it than Hill Pereira. But anyway, we are here to talk about 298, but I just thought that was, so it's something that's been talked about the whole build up to 298.
Yeah.
Even the announcement sort of, I'll be honest, when the co-main finished on this card, or, even after the main card had finished, but just after, when the main fighters were going to be coming out, there was a brief moment in the octagon, and I thought, oh, are they about to announce something here, coming up on the screens and in the arena and everything? And that would have been the way to do it. And I think
that would have been.
That might have happened had it not been for the fact that Dana knows that this is a little bit of a letdown from what he said he was going to deliver, which is not something you say about the UFC too often.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's absolutely not. And Adam Catterall made a really good point on the Fight Disciples video they dropped. He was like, if you think this, go watch the boxing. You'll be grateful. But I totally agree, mate. Honestly, I totally agree. I think it's a scramble at the end of the day. They've scrambled. Leon apparently turned down 3 guys. It'd be interesting to hear the 3 names you think of who it was. But also, so much talk. Tom Aspinall. One thing on
who do you think he would have turned down out of interest, mate? Who do you think Leon would have turned down if he turned down 3 people? Because I saw something saying that Bilal Muhammad was not one of those names.
No, Leon accepted.
No, sorry, not Bilal. Yeah, I'm saying, obviously, if Leon
accepted
the fight, it means the other people didn't. So who turned him down?
Yeah, I think
if you look at a 300 headliner and you're not going to do Bilal Muhammad, I would have assumed that one was Hamzat.
Yep.
I would have probably assumed that another one was maybe Shavkat Rakhmonov. And if I had to pick a third, it could have potentially been Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, but you can eliminate two from there because of Ramadan. So that's those 2 out the window. And then the third, if it was Shavkat, I don't know. Maybe there's an underlying injury or something we don't know, because it doesn't seem like Shavkat would turn it down. It doesn't make sense. But fair play to Leon. He is that guy for accepting those 3 fights. An interesting point that one of my friends brought up, Jamie, if you're listening, shout out to Jamie. He cracked it, the Conor McGregor thing. He said that his theory is that now that the UFC is a publicly listed company, they need to return yearly profits for shareholders and things like that. He said, having Conor McGregor towards the back end of the year, what does it do? It puts up your Q4, Q3 profit through the roof, right? Whereas for this Q, we already have 300, I guess, just fitting in there. Well, 298, 299. Then you have 300. Then you have International Fight Week. Then Conor McGregor. So I actually think that's probably the best theory I've heard so far. Maybe there is a bit of a rift going on. Dana seemed to.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a rift. I know Conor's come out and said some stuff. I think that's probably not a bad shout. Even if it's not down to financial reasons as such, I think just the fact that 300 is so stacked, you can put Conor on a card by himself with a pretty poor undercard and it's going to sell.
As they've done before,
because Conor's got that name. I suppose, the most frustrating thing about it, and the thing I feel most disappointed with and sorry for, is Michael Chandler. Because Michael Chandler's gone on, he's done the Ultimate Fighter, he's done that with Conor. Do you know who would have been a great fighter to have on UFC 300? Michael Chandler. Because he's nothing but entertainment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You stick Michael Chandler in there with anybody in that lightweight division, and it's going to be an absolute belting fight. And we've not seen Chandler, what now, 18 months?
Long time.
But it's going to be
Right.
near on 2 years by the time he comes back? I might be over-exaggerating that, but...
I'm going to say PSG, but Poirier at MSG, I think, was his last fight, no?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's rough. That's rough. They must be giving him a little bit on the side, but either way, yeah, I agree. Underwhelming. It seems like a scramble, especially as you've got Rio de Janeiro the month after, right? 301. Surely you want Pereira to do that. But I like, hey, Pereira stepping up. I totally agree with you. It's a fight we'd all like to see. This past weekend, we obviously saw the rise of a new king in the featherweight division. Where do you want to start? Volk or Topuria? Where are you going to lean towards?
I think it's only fair, mate, that we start with Ilia Topuria. You know, I wouldn't say I didn't see this coming. I don't think there's a lot of people out there would say they didn't have even if you were the biggest Volk fan in the world, you had a little niggling feeling that Ilia Topuria just might be that guy. And I think he proved he is. The kid's just got absolute dynamite in his hands. I thought Volk won the first round, but I thought he looked uncomfortable right from the off. I can make almost similarities almost to how he and Garry fought. He was very back foot minded. He was very jab heavy. He was looking on to me like he was more concerned with what was coming back from Topuria than what he was actually going to do. And I don't think we've seen that from Volk, which I think is probably something that comes from getting knocked out in your last fight. I think when you get hurt like that, we see it all the time. Some people just don't come back the same. The mental demons, I think Volk's as strong as anybody mentally, but I do think that you get laid out cold like that, it hurts the ego. He's not a guy with a massive ego, but it hurts. It hurts him as a competitor. It hurts him as an athlete. Ilia Topuria has wound me up all week, I'll be honest.
I can jump on that as well.
There's just so much to not like about him. But if we focus purely on his fighting, he just waited. He was patient. He didn't rush anything. But his nose was getting a bit busted up because Volk was sticking that jab quite firmly at him. And then he just waited for his chance, mate. As soon as he saw it, he took it. And like I said, he's got absolute dynamite in his hand. The kid's just got it. And the thing that makes the Ilia Topuria the most exciting is that this isn't a guy we're looking at that has a glaring hole in his game insofar as, is he a good striker? Is he a poor grappler? Is he a good grappler? Is he a poor striker? He's not. He can do a bit of everything. We saw what he did to Bryce Mitchell. He's obviously got a chin as well because he went in there with Josh Emmett. He's just been out there and took out the king of the featherweight division for as long as a lot of newcomers to this sport will remember. It's the kid just got it. And I just one slate I would have on Topuria is be original. And it's not just him that suffers with this. There's so many, because Conor's been in and Conor's done it. And the reason why Conor was so successful and so big is because everything he did was authentic. Everything he did was fresh. It was new. It wasn't a copycat. It was Conor being Conor. Ilia Topuria's got the Conor McGregor tattoo on the chest. He's got the Conor McGregor tattoo on the back. He's stealing the belt at the press conference. He's calling Conor out afterwards. With all due respect, we know Conor's fighting Chandler. He's not even fighting anywhere near featherweight. We're talking about 170. Conor's even joked about 185. You're not getting that fight. It's a stupid call out. It's never going to happen. And all it does is make you look like, to use Conor's words, a little fanboy. It's not a great look. I hate it. I hate seeing these people come on and call for Conor McGregor. I understand it in certain circumstances, certain fighters at a certain level. He's just won the belt at featherweight. Why would Conor McGregor face him next? There's no desire. Had he come on and said, Max, you've got this fight against Gaethje, but you're the number 2 in this division, and I want to show you that this wasn't a fluke. I can beat you too. Anything along those lines, and everyone would be going, yeah, okay. Or Yair Rodriguez, you've been talking a lot of shit. Come through against Ortega. Max is tied up. We'll get this sorted. That's the kind of stuff as a fan I want to hear from Ilia Topuria. But even like when he's on the mic and he's giving his speech, there was a bit of authenticity there. He's talking about, you can do anything if you believe in yourself and you back yourself. And then he's saying, there's all these doubters and look at me now. And I'm thinking, there's a young lad from Birmingham that won the world title and said those exact words as well. Look at me now. It's just not, it's not authentic. Be yourself, because I have a real hard time with it. And I'm not trying to slate Topuria here, because he's just been out there and beaten one of the greatest featherweights of all time.
Yeah.
That you can't take away from that. But what's your take on Topuria before we move on to Volk?
Yeah, my take's very similar, honestly. Yeah, like you said, wound me right up in the lead up before then. He's been winding me up for a while. I like two things. First of all, when they were doing the face off and he kind of said that I'm just chasing my dreams, I respect you. That's the Topuria I want to see. That's the Topuria I want to see. You put that with Iker Casillas, Sergio Ramos, Rafa Nadal, all coming out doing this video for him. You already have a superstar. He's had 2 million followers before this fight, right? He's already a superstar. Dude's already a superstar. You see him cutting weight with Merab Cejudo. That's the stuff I want to see, right? That's the stuff I want to see. That's going to get me behind him. None of this bull crap that you mentioned there. I hated all of that. But it was detaching, personality to fighter. What incredible performance, man. I think there's only one way Volk was going to lose that fight, and that was the way he was going to lose that fight, by getting backed up against the fence and just getting absolutely hammered. I liked parts of Volk's game plan. I felt in that first round that that's the way it was kind of going to go. Like, Volk's going to try and chip him from the outside, try and lead off. I think he was leading off to the left-hand side after his jab and try and get 2 or 3 in and then get out. But then, man, Topuria just went and did it. And kind of, I've got a few points here that I'm just going to shout out, and then I want to ask you a question. First of all is get your Leon Edwards moment, i.e. take your belt back to Spain, like Leon did with London. Get your Leon Edwards moment. That's what you should be focusing on. But get away from Conor McGregor. What is the point? It's just a name, right? It's just a name. Conor is 35, almost 36 years old. He's going to have 2 or 3 more fights in the UFC, and they're going to be legacy fights anyway. And he's never going to cut down to 145 again, right? He's never going to come down. And to get his name out of your mouth, do exactly what you said, Nathan. Call out those guys. You've got Ortega and Rodriguez next week. That lines them up perfectly. Do your September date in Spain. Are you going to get the Santiago Bernabeu? Who knows? That's a massive arena to fill. We probably would fill it. But go and do that, man. Go and get your Leon Edwards moment, and then go and say, right, again, similar to Leon Edwards, I'm going to clear out. I'm going to make myself undeniable as the greatest in the division to beat the legacy contenders that are in the consideration, because that's what these guys are: Rodriguez, Ortega, Holloway, right? You look at that's the thing. He talks about, I need new contenders. Conor's not a new contender, right? Why are you saying you want new contenders and you want to get rid of the old guys and then call out Conor? That makes sense to me.
It's like even if he'd have turned around, mate, and he'd have said, right, I'm going to beat Max.
Yeah.
But Max has beat nearly everyone in this division if Volk hasn't. I'm going to beat Max. I'm going to beat Yair if he comes through Ortega.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat Movsar Evloev, because he might be up here at this time. But even if he'd not mentioned Evloev, if he'd have said, and after that, I'm going to go and get the belt off Islam Makhachev, that's your moment. People would have gone, oh, right, shit, yeah, he's going to go step up in weight. He's going to go and get the title, but he wants to, defend a couple of times first. Everyone's on board with that. I think he missed his moment. And it's not something that he'd not thought of before.
Yeah, but you've got to earn it. You've got to be one of these guys, like an Izzy when he went up and fought Jan, like Volk before he went up and fought Islam, like Aljo in the weight class below, right? You've got to be one of those guys that earns it. I absolutely think there should be that three defensive bracket before you're allowed to do that. I think there needs to be something like that. Him coming out and talking all of this, it's just, with that post-fight press conference, post-fight interview, I was like, yes, and then he called out Conor, and I was like, I just can't like you. I just can't like you. And I really should. Like, I grew up in Spain. I could have, what's the word? I could have a horse in the game, so to speak, with him. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. From a fighting perspective, yes, but from a personality perspective, no. So those are my kind of thoughts. And one question I wanted to ask you before we go to Volk is this, Tom Aspinall aside, do you think this is the first of this new generation of MMA fighter coming through that we've seen make this kind of statement? You know, I say Tom Aspinall because he's the only other one I can think of really that really broke through that can do everything: hands, feet, i.e. kicking, and the ground game. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Ilia Topurias is all that. I mean, I said in the breakdown I was favouring Volk. I fancied Volk to get this done as we moved into the championship rounds. There was always a bit of doubt there, but you know, Topuria had not beaten anybody to suggest that he was capable of going out and beating Volk, with all due respect to Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett and everybody else. But when we look at who Volk's beat and how he's beaten them, even the fight he lost against Islam, the first one, in the way that he lost it, with it being razor close like that, it shows that Volk's at a certain level, and we've not seen that from Topuria. But yeah, I think you're right. I think this was always a really intriguing fight. I thought Volk would get it done. Topuria proved he is this good. He is the guy. And you're absolutely right. I think I think that Ilia Topuria will hold this title now for a lengthy period of time. If not as long as he wants to. Because I think the thing is, he is getting better. You know, the vulnerabilities are still there, yes, but he's got that level, man. He can change the game if he wants to. He can grapple if he wants to, and he can put your lights out like that.
Yeah, I think Leon Edwards. You could throw Leon in that bracket as well, but he's almost still kind of in that bracket that was around 5 or 6 years ago, right? Yeah, kind of transitioning.
Yeah, I mean, Leon's very much a striker that's learned to grapple pretty much because he was taking on Kamaru Usman and then Colby back to back.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not saying he's learned to do it. He's always been able to do it, but he's maybe taken that to a new level, especially with the Kamaru Usman fights. So
yeah.
I think, yeah, definitely Topuria is one of these. I mean, that's one side of the coin, and I can't wait to see what happens with Topuria next.
Yeah,
a fight at the Bernabeu would be incredible if they could do that. As for Volk,
just one last word on Topuria for me.
go on.
Enjoy him while you can, because it's very, very rare. And fighters, it seems to be as they get older, you start to realize how good they are. Enjoy Topuria while we can as a fighter. Enjoy him in the octagon while we can, because his rise over the next 3 or 4 years, unless somebody ridiculous comes along, it's going to be unreal. Unless he gets a horrible injury, enjoy him while we can, because it's going to be a hell of a few years. And it makes me cry thinking he's probably going to beat Max Holloway, but that's a conversation for another day because he's got a car crash to go to. Alexander Volkanovski, Nathan, go ahead.
Yeah, it still hurts, mate, to be honest. I mean, I'm a big Volk fan, and I'm not pretending to be anything else. You know, the guy's come in, snatched the belt off one of the greatest featherweights that we've ever seen, and continued to defend and become one of the greatest featherweights we've ever seen. I feel bad for him, mate, because honestly, when we talk about the greatest featherweights of all time, we're pretty much talking about Jose Aldo, Max Holloway, and Alexander Volkanovski. And for Volk being so close to getting or on his way to the amount of defenses Aldo's had, you know, it's and by the unbeaten run that Max went on, for example, it will hurt his ego. Like I say, he's not egotistical in any way. He's not one of those that carries around walks around talking a lot of smack. But he wants to be the best that there has ever been at this weight. And I feel like we're in a position now where that opportunity is perhaps passed. And you know what? I don't know if it's fair to Topuria or even fair to Volkanovski to suggest that age has caught up with him now, because I don't believe that. I don't think it's a matter of age. I think it's a matter of confidence. You know, we say it in this game all the time. You know, losing becomes a habit. And he lost to Islam, bounced back against Yair, and then got knocked out by Islam, and now he's been knocked out by Topuria. Generally, when people go on this kind of skid at his age, it's hard to turn it around because you're not a young learner of this game anymore. You were peaked. And I think we for Islam Makhachev 1 was peak Volkanovski. The Yair fight, the ones before, and then the Yair fight as well, he was. And I just think going out getting head kicked like he did against Islam, and then coming back to the back and getting taken out by Topuria, it's just hard, man, because he's such a phenomenal guy and such an incredible talent. And I just feel like it's just the confidence. You know, he portrays a confident man, and I think he went in there believing that he was too good for Topuria. I think the big problem, and you know, he just got caught early against Islam. We are getting to a position now where Volk's maybe going to be looking at himself and thinking, that's 2 on the bounce now. Am I starting to slip? Am I starting to skid? As soon as those questions come into it, it's hard to turn that back around.
Yeah, it is big time, man. I mean, I think the point I want to jump on there is that what you said about peak Volkanovski. I think peak Volkanovski for me was Max 3 and then into Yair. I think those were the 2 peak Volkanovski fights. I think he was tremendous in that first what's it called, in the first Islam fight. But I think peak best he looked, definitely Max 3 and Korean Zombie. I mean, yeah, okay, questionable Korean Zombie, but Max 3, I think the best we're going to see of Volk. And unfortunately, I think the best that he's got. You know, I think, like you said, I don't think it is a case of the age, the chin, or anything like that, because you know, he took the ones before that from Topuria, and other people haven't, right?
No.
Jai Herbert, for example. Other people haven't taken those shots. Josh Emmett somehow did for 5 rounds. That's a miracle in itself at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just that his game plan was good until it wasn't. I think I'd really like to see somebody really pressure Topuria, like really go at him in that kind of force him back style a little bit. Volk just couldn't do it.
Yeah,
he just couldn't do it.
I didn't want to interrupt you then, mate, so sorry, but it's funny because if we look at this division, the underlying number 2 contenders, if you like, are Max now and Yair Rodriguez, I believe, because I think Rodriguez beats Ortega, and the fact that Volk's not the champ anymore opens a door for Yair Rodriguez to get a shot. Yair's exciting, he's dynamic. I would fear for him against Topuria. What I will say is there is a guy in this division that does have a phenomenal chin that can box like a mother. And that's Max Holloway. Now, stylistically, Max might be actually a more difficult match for Topuria than Volk, because Volk is very good everywhere. He is very well rounded. Max, on the other hand, is very much a striker, a boxer.
Yeah.
And Max, it's an intriguing one, because I think Max Topuria gives us an absolute war. We might see Max's chin go. It might, you know, and the last thing I want to see him do if he gets knocked out by Gaethje, I don't want to see him going with Topuria.
No,
because otherwise that's 2 of the greatest featherweights we've ever seen just disappearing into the
please
fog.
don't do it. Don't do it.
I think the last thing I would say on this fight is what's next. For Volkanovski, it needs to be some time out. For Topuria, there's obviously Volk's asked for the rematch, and coming into this, I said on the pod, if Volk loses, he gets a rematch. I think I've changed my mind, because I think when you consider just how he looked, it's not. I don't think he looked bad. I actually thought he won the first round. It's just the confidence thing. Like when I see somebody skirting around on the back, popping out a jab, and then just like getting back out the way of everything, you look like a scared fighter. And it reminds me a little bit of football or soccer to any guys across the pond, right? If a team is winning a fight, or you know, say they're winning a fight and they're holding on, it's the last 5 or 10 minutes of a game, and they sit back, what always happens when a team sits back? They concede a goal. You know, that's what ends up happening. And this was the same with Volk. He sat on the back foot. At some point, Topuria was going to go, and you're sitting there waiting for him.
Yeah.
like you said, I think the way to beat Ilia Topurias is to stand and bang toe to toe with him. But there's only a handful of people that can probably do that, and they're all capable of being clipped. But I don't want to see the rematch next. I just don't think Volk's. I don't think he's ready. I think if Volk goes out and gets a win, and then comes back in against Topuria, then he might have a different mentality, a different level of confidence. But I think he needs a bit of a rebirth, which at his age is going to be tricky.
Yeah, I mean the trouble with that is, and it's where I was going with Volk. The trouble of it is Topuria is only going to get better. Volk is on the decline, as we both said. His primes were 2 or 3 fights ago. Whether he takes a break, whether he takes another fight, I still believe he probably beats most of what's left, or all of what's left really in the featherweight division that he's not beat already. Because who's it going to be? Arnold Allen, Evloev? I just don't. I don't know. Unless you're putting that in Australia in September is when they tend to go there. Unless you're putting Volk as a co-main to an Izzy or something like that, I don't see how else they're going to structure that fight to make it make sense, right? And then it's a case of you do your Topuria, Ortega, Rodriguez. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with that car crash that is Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje, but I think Max has got to win. And if Max wins, why doesn't he stay at 155? If he loses, he can't come down and get another title shot straight away. So that's a conundrum in itself. So that Rodriguez Ortega fight lines up perfectly for Topuria. If he's he's got to take those fights. He's got to fight the contenders. That's the way it is. And then for Volk, I do believe, because of the champion he is and because of what he's done for the company, like he said, I do believe when he comes back, it should be to a title shot. That's the right thing to do. It's the stupid thing to do because, like I said, Topuria is only going to get better. Volk is only, unfortunately, going to decline from this point. So from a fight perspective, I don't think we see too much of a different result. Maybe even Topuria gets it done quicker because that's just the way it is, or maybe we see him do what Volk did to Holloway in that third fight, just say, okay, well, I'm going to play you at your game, right? I'm going to beat you at your game and show you how good I actually am. It's a real conundrum for Volk, I think.
It's tricky as well, isn't it, mate? Because you see Izzy, for example, and Izzy has lost and had a shot, and he's probably going to walk straight back into a title shot again this time round, despite losing. Now, the problem with Volk is every one of those contenders, apart from Evloev, has been beaten. Volk has beaten Max 3 times. He's beaten Yair Rodriguez. He's beaten Josh Emmett. Yeah, he's beaten Emmett, hasn't he? He's beaten. Yeah, I think so. He's not faced Arnold Allen.
No, he
which
hasn't.
Might be an interesting next step, but the reality is, it's when you're looking at Ortega, you're looking at Yair, you're looking at those guys as you look down the list. Is Volk going to face Calvin Kattar?
Yeah, no.
Probably not. I think the hard thing is that if he does have a matchup in the interim or next, the only one that really makes any sense is Evloev.
Or you mentioned Kattar there, Aljo. If Aljo comes in and does a good job, not necessarily a finish, but if he goes and wins that 3 rounds over Kattar, there's definitely an argument because that's a fight that Aljo talked about, and it would get Aljo to the title, and it would let the division kind of fix itself out a little bit. I mean, hey, if Aljo goes in and starts with Calvin Kattar in the first round, UFC Spain Topuria versus Aljo, let's do it, right? Aljo's got the pedigree. You would probably argue that he could deserve it at that stage, given how the division is. That's it for Volk. I mean, I don't know how you do it with Volk if you do it as a co-headliner to an Izzy in Australia. But if he goes and faces Topuria again, it's just like, okay, does he maybe try and do the Henry Cejudo and take off some time and then move up a division? I mean, we've just seen how that worked out for Cejudo, which we'll chat about in a bit. It's a real complex one. I think for Topuria, it's simple. Get your Leon Edwards moment in Spain against one of the contenders or Aljo, because that would be a massive fight if Aljo goes and does the business against Kattar, and then just continue being a monster. But for Volk, it's tough. Anything else on that, or should we jump into this co-main event?
No, let's jump to the co-main, mate.
Actually, I forgot to to give the thoughts of our Canadian colleague, Mr. Boguslavski. So his bullet points here on Volk versus Ilia. You can't let Ilia bring you next to the fence or it's lights out. The cleanest shot on Volk ever landed, other than the head kick. Too soon for Volk, question mark. Take the Izzy approach, take some time out. Welterweights are down, 35 years on older, are 1-23 in championship fights. Change to the guards with O'Malley and Topuria, and then Topuria is scary and still unknown after only going 2 rounds with Volk. Let's go to a fight that makes me happy. I made sure I wasn't going into the Volkanovski fight already crying. One of my probably top 2 favorite fighters, Robert Whittaker, taking on Paulo Costa and surviving a spinning wheel kick to the face at the end of that first round. I have no idea how he survived that, and then came out and won the second round. Man, what were your thoughts about the Australian's return to power, so to speak?
I mean, you mentioned it then, mate. But if Robert Whittaker's not one of your favourite fighters, you're in the wrong game. You know, there's nothing to not like about Robert Whittaker. I wish he had just that little bit more pop, because he was landing clean constantly on Paulo Costa. Costa, fair play, got a cracking chin. You know, other than Izzy, I don't really remember him being in too much difficulty against anybody else particularly. He may have lost fights, but hurt, I'm not really seeing that. I've got a couple of different takeaways, but if you mentioned something then, and you mentioned how Costa landed the spinning wheel kick, and then Robert Whittaker came back and won rounds 2 and 3. I'm going to speak for a minority of people here that had Robert Whittaker winning this fight 30-27.
A minority of 1.
Well, do you know what, mate?
You, me, and the judge.
Here's the thing, and there's a comparison you can make down the line when you look at the kind of Mackenzie Dern fight and some other different fights on there. Robert Whittaker was pretty much lighting Paulo Costa up in round 1. That left hook, the low kick followed by the left hook lead, was landing every time. He hit Paulo Costa with some heavy shots in that first round, and I thought won the first round convincingly. And then, yes, he was clipped. He was hurt. But he was hit. There was one big shot landed. That one big shot landed for me doesn't win that round. I can understand why people would say that. He got off damaged. It was definitely the most damaging shot of the fight, of the fight, but of the round. Most importantly, but I just felt like Whittaker won that round kind of conclusively in my eyes, apart from obviously that last little moment there. And I actually felt like the 4 minutes 50 from Robert Whittaker outweighed that violent 10 seconds from Paulo Costa, even though he was close to being finished. But when we say close to being finished, he didn't get dropped.
No.
You know,
he did the Robert Whittaker chicken dance, reminiscent of Yoel Romero, right?
He did, yeah. But at the same time, you know, we saw Merab Cejudo do a bit of a stumble in the first round against Garry Much. Admittedly, Whittaker was more hurt than I think Merab was. That was a bit of a flash shot, but I'm just making it out there as a point. I actually thought Whittaker did enough in round 1 to still win the round. I've seen other people on socials saying the same thing, but I appreciate that that's a minority opinion. The other thing I would say on Paulo Costa is Paulo Costa needs to be more active, not just in his fights, but in fighting in general, because Paulo Costa is a bit of a specimen. And John Anik, I think, was talking about it on the broadcast, or it might have been Rogan, but how quick he throws that left high kick. It's just violent and brutal and nasty, and a guy that big shouldn't have that kind of explosive speed. But he doesn't fight enough. We don't see him in the octagon enough. And even when he's in there, probably because of a bit of inactivity, he just doesn't look sharp enough to me. He doesn't look like he's got the energy. I think he was landing the heavier shots when he landed. He was hurting Whittaker more than Whittaker was hurting him. But the cleaner work and the more frequent work came from Robert Whittaker, which is why, for me, although this was a very exciting fight, I thought Whittaker won this very comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, You're in that minority with me. I'm in that minority as well. Although I could absolutely see, like, as soon as they read out that first scorecard, I mean, I was very confident the fight was going the way of Robert Whittaker, and I have to say, I think we're seeing less of these decisions go the wrong way because of the way
Yeah.
that they kind of detailed more the scoring criteria. And if you want to hear me and Nathan debate about that, go back to our Alexa Grosso, Valentina Shevchenko episode, where Nathan does an incredible job of breaking down what a 10-7 is, what a 10-8 is, what a 10-9 is. But yeah, I think we're seeing less of it, and it's really good. You know, fights like this are exactly where that one scorecard, mind you, did get it, in my opinion, right. Although I can see the argument for, okay, that massive shot, and why people who haven't necessarily had it explained to them, although they probably shouldn't be judges if they haven't, but haven't understood it correctly, could score that for Costa, because that was a massive shot, and it could have been, with 20 or so more seconds of fight ending sequence. I think. I mean, we've seen Robert Whittaker survive that before. You know, I mentioned the Yoel Romero fight.
Yeah.
He obviously didn't in the Israel Adesanya fight, but that was again more of a combination of strikes. And I think when you talk about exactly like you did, everything else was on point. And I think it's only because it's Paulo Costa. Because I rewatched the Vittori fight in preparation for my piece to write about Whittaker. I always make an excuse to watch the two Romero fights whenever Robert Whittaker's fighting. And I watched the Izzy fights as well. And yeah, Robert's never really hit anybody with that level of pop and power before like that. And I think it's only because that's Paulo Costa, and for some reason he has an iron chin to anybody not named Israel Adesanya, and that doesn't seem to leave marks. He doesn't seem to get marked up. He never looks like he's been in a fight for some reason. The dude must be
That secret juice.
Yeah, that secret juice carved out stone. Whereas you look at Robert Whittaker, he looked like he'd been run over by a car. Like, honestly, he looked a right mess by the end of it. And you sometimes think, like, definitely 3 or 4 years ago in MMA, you think, oh, those visuals are not good for the judges and that kind of thing. Where that could happen. You know, 3 or 4 years ago, we could have been looking at a robbery, right? We could have been looking at Paulo Costa picking up the win here.
I think there's only two ways you can score this fight, and I'm okay with either. And that's 29-28 to Robert Whittaker, giving Paulo Costa the first round, or it's 30-27 to Robert Whittaker.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can make an argument for Paulo Costa winning this fight. And here's the thing, and people get confused with it. You can have a close fight, and you can have a competitive fight. This wasn't a close fight. It was an exciting fight. It was a competitive fight, and Paulo Costa absolutely made it fun and enjoyable. And it was I don't think he actually got a fight of the night, did it? But it should have. It probably should have. And that's great, but it wasn't close. Robert Whittaker won 2.75 rounds out of 3.
Yeah. I totally agree.
That's just the reality of it.
I totally agree. And I mean,
I just think I want to see Paulo Costa more because I like Costa.
Yeah.
And I think he's exciting. I think he's a great personality. I mean, we'll move on to the next fight shortly, but even in pushing Ian Garry down the stairs at the press conference, he's just fun, man. The secret juice, the social media. He's a good dude. I think for Paulo Costa, I don't really care what I see next from him. I just want to see him back in soon. I want to see him fight again this year, at least once, if not twice. That's the kind of form I want to see from Paulo Costa, because I think if he gets a bit of momentum going, he can be a problem in this division for a lot of people. I think if you look at Robert Whittaker, for me, it's only one fight next for Robert Whittaker. He's got to get the Drickus rematch, man. If Izzy's not coming back anytime soon, or Izzy's not getting it, maybe Izzy goes and gets that one back against Sean. He said it this week, and I completely agree with the sentiment. Robert Whittaker 9 times out of 10 beats Drickus du Plessis. He looked off, he got caught. That version of Robert Whittaker beats Drickus. Yeah, the version before the Drickus fight beats Drickus. It was just on the night.
The one in the middle.
The night version of Robert Whittaker, he just either something wasn't right or he wasn't at the races, but he is a far superior talent than Drickus du Plessis. Yeah,
and that's the argument I made in my article. I titled one section Robert Whittaker 3.0, or the Reaper 3.0, because every time we've seen Robert Whittaker lose, he has come back better. and he has come back better with a vengeance. Not this doesn't count his earlier fight earlier in his career where he's 7 losses, man. That's weird to think about. 2 of them obviously to Izzy, but every single time he's come back better. The first Izzy fight, he wiped out the rest of the division. The second Izzy fight, he put on a masterclass against Marvin Vettori, and then he ran into that off night on against Dricus Duplessis. It was so good to see that Robert Whittaker on Saturday night, Sunday morning. I loved it. I loved it.
It's funny, mate, because he actually fought the way that I thought Volkanovski needed to fight against Topuria. He didn't step back. He took the fight to Paulo Costa. He stood in the middle. All right, he backed up occasionally. And again, as we've said, he was actually getting in a bit of trouble when he was backing up. But when he was stood in front of Costa, Costa just couldn't live with the hand speed. He couldn't live with the accuracy of the shots. He was getting clipped constantly.
Yeah.
There was one point, I think there was a minute, and I think it was round 2, but there's a particular minute in round 2 where I think I counted 8 left hooks from Robert Whittaker, and they all landed clean. And they all knocked Paulo Costa back a touch, but more off balance than hurt. Do you know what I mean? Because Rob just doesn't have that real power. But I think you've got a bit of is it a quartet? The 4?
Yeah.
You've got Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa, Sean Strickland, and Izzy. And I think if Izzy doesn't take on Dricus, Izzy takes on Sean. And if Robert Whittaker doesn't take on Dricus, then Rob needs to take on Sean. I think that's where we're looking at for another number 1 contender here.
Yeah, I totally agree. The one thing I will say that isn't in Rob's favour now that was with his previous losses and coming back is time. He's now 33. Yes, he's in the older weight classes, but dude has been in some wars, right? We talked about those 2 Yoel Romero fights. The second Izzy fight was a bit of a war. He's obviously taken that shot off of Dricus. This was now pretty, Paulo Costa hits hard, right? You don't get spinning wheel kick to the face and live to tell the tale very well for a long period of time. So he's got to be active. Obviously, I think the Australia card will be later in the year for him. Or do they line him up to go and do Dricus in South Africa? I would hope so, because I really want to see him get that fight back, and I really want to see that title fight over any of the other 2. I want to see, Izzy in his comeback go to Sean, because Izzy in his what's the statistic with his last 3 or 4 title fights? He's like 3-1 or something like that. The 2 against Pereira, 1 against Dricus, and then the other one. What was the other one? Sean, yeah. So he's 3-1 in his last few title fights. But there's not so much of an argument as there is with Volk, to come back for an immediate title rematch. So yeah, I think you follow the Shields. You follow the Shields matchmaking. That's the way you do it, where and when you do it. But if you're Rob, you've got to be active. You've got to get it soon, no matter what it is, because time is not on his side, and you want to see it. But I just want to see him back in there. Good. Paulo Costa, who would you like to see him face next? Just anybody? Doesn't matter. Hamzat, for example.
Hamzat.
Imavov.
Hamzat's the fight to make.
Yeah, get that.
Hamzat is absolutely the fight to make. I don't necessarily stylistically like it for Costa, but also I'm not impressed at all by Hamzat. If I could pick one fight for Hamzat now, it would be a Kamaru Usman rematch.
Yeah.
Because I think Usman deserves that one back. There might be some talks coming about Robert Whittaker and Hamzat. I'd love to see that, because I think Robert Whittaker exposes Hamzat.
I would hope so.
We'll see. We're not talking about Hamzat. He talks about everybody else, so we don't need to talk about him. But yeah, I suppose the other one that circulated a lot of stuff this week, mate, was Garry.
Ian Machado, Garry, and his whole family, and shooter boxing. I have to say that was really heartwarming stuff when they were doing the embedded, and he was down there at shooter box, and just how much love he had for the team, how much love they had for him. That was really, really nice, really, really nice. And then he gets on the mic and he says he's too big. He could be too big for a return fight to Ireland. And I'm like, Ian Garry, I was just getting back to being on the train and like you as a fighter. Incredible dude. Obviously, he went to a split decision with Jeff Neal. So this is one where we can kind of talk about the card and break it down a little bit.
It's Ian Garry, for me, is very clever at what he does. He does get people talking about him. He understands which bits to record, which bits not to record. But his problem is, I think he's underestimated how social media can run wild. And again, just like we talked about in the last fight, I'm going to be in a minority when I say this. I like Ian Garry. I actually think Ian Garry seems like a real good dude. He gets a lot of shit for the stuff with his wife. He gets a lot of shit. You know, he's called a cook and he's this and he's that and he's all these other things. And social media just kind of runs wild with it a little bit. I mean, but if you talk about the Machado name, his wife's name, but the name of his missus's ex-husband or ex whatever he is. But if you listen to his reasoning behind doing that, it's in the interest of the kids.
Yeah.
You know, which to me says he's a stand-up guy that's put his ego to one side to do what he thinks is right for some little ones. And I think that deserves a lot of credit. But I think social media-wise, it just runs wild and they just make him out to be this cook and this whatever else. And he seems like a top family man, if you ask me. And I think the crowd's kind of turned on him because some of the stuff that he said and some of the stuff that he's done. And even when he talked about the island comments, I read the headline and went, oh, God. And I even watched the video where he said it and I thought, oh, God, Ian, no, that's not the right thing to do because that's just going to annoy the Irish people as much as anything.
Yeah.
But I think he explained afterwards as well in an interview, and he was basically saying that Conor grew to a point of stardom where they wanted to take him back to Ireland, but he just became too much of a draw that they wanted to put his fights on in the US. And all he was saying in essence was, I don't want to get to a point where I become this phenomenal talent that it's too late for me to go back to Ireland. You know what I mean? It's just how social media runs with everything. If you don't look at the entire picture, you get a bit of a clickbait comment and you run wild. And
Yeah.
I think Ian Garry has been. There's a lot of people turned against him straight away for the similarities with Conor McGregor or talking like Conor McGregor or saying the same things as Conor McGregor and being a fanboy of Conor McGregor. I think the difference between my opinion of Topuria, for example, and my opinion of Ian Garry is that Ian Garry's Irish.
Conor
McGregor is a legend. He is a star to him. He is a hero. He is an icon. And he sounds like Conor McGregor because he's from the same fucking country. There's just, I'm not here just to defend Ian Garry, don't get me wrong, and I appreciate that other people have a different opinion, but I think the dude just needs a bit of a break, man. As for the fight, definitely one of his worst performances. Split decision, can't see it. Can't see a split decision at all. I mean, I will just quickly check here, but I think I had Ian Garry winning. Yeah, I gave him 30-27. I gave him every round because Jeff Neal didn't do anything, simply put. The negative visual of Ian Garry skirting on the outside and running away, almost, as I've seen a lot of people explain it or, describe it. He was just fighting on the outside against a dangerous puncher who everybody in the build-up has said Jeff Neal has the power to put Ian Garry's lights out. So Ian Garry fights on the outside. He fights smart. He stays behind the jab. He keeps it at range. I think it was one of the first things they said on comms. It might have been Bisping that said it. Said he'd been speaking to Ian Garry on fight week and they talked about how Shavkat had fought Jeff Neal and how all these other people had fought him and what the things they did right and what they did wrong. And Garry said to him that he's got the height, he's got the range, he's got the reach advantages over Jeff Neal, so he's going to use them. And he did. And he won the fight for me at a canter without doing anything. I think the only thing I would say for Ian Garry is him and Shavkat kind of come in at the same level. And Shavkat's doing this and Ian Garry's doing this. They're both moving up, but they're moving at very different paces because of the way that they're going out and sorting the fights. I thought it looked fantastic against Neil Magny last time out.
Yeah.
Kicked the living crap out of Neil Magny, but didn't finish the fight and should have finished the fight. Here, didn't even try and finish the fight, didn't even try and get involved in the fight. Just pit-potted his way to victory. One way of looking at it is, from an athlete and a fighter's point of view, he never put himself in harm's way. He came out unscathed and he won it at a canter. The other side is, he looks like he doesn't want to be involved in a fight. He looks like, is he really that good? And again, everything just runs a little bit wild with that.
Yeah, I think for me, from a fight perspective, it was very much a Jose Mourinho away performance in the Champions League second leg when he's already 1-0 up. He just wants to do just enough to get his team through, just to make sure, they pick up the victory. I agree with you. I don't see it as a split. I was pretty confused when that came out, and I think Gary's face kind of said it all. He kind of went, "Oh, okay, this is a bit weird." Yeah, I echo very much what
Yeah.
you said. I'll just read off. Or I apologize, John. I forgot to read his co-main comments, but we won't go back to it. John said, Neil, Garry, yeah, disappointing fight. Neil should have done more, and then Garry should have done more longer combos. I think Neil presents a specific set of problems, and if you're someone like Ian Garry who doesn't have the grappling pedigree that a Shavkat has, and you want to go to that, you're not going to close that distance against somebody like a Jeff Neal, and Jeff Neal just doesn't have, again, we draw comparisons to that main event, right? Jeff Neal just didn't seem to have the combination or the speed to get Garry really put up against that fence to be able to get the blow to knock him out. I think Jeff Neal's ideally placed for where he is, 6 to 10 is probably about where he fits in the division. And then Ian Garry, he's got to do a lot more in his upcoming fights. I think that's a really good take. What you said there is he a bit scared to get in a fight, so to speak? I love the call out of Colby. I do want to see that fight. I think that's a really interesting fight. Yeah, and I think it brings a lot of eyes to Garry. And I think it's a smart call out considering the rest of the division. I think it's a smart call out. Will the UFC do it? I don't know. You're nodding your head. You don't like it?
I don't like it.
No?
I don't like it. No, I think Colby's all the news, man. Leon just exposed Colby for being what he is. It's very average, one-dimensional, and isn't good enough. So why is Ian Garry calling out somebody who just got beat comfortably? He's just not that. Colby just ain't that. And you know what? I think Colby's star's gone. I think the moment Dana White came out, he had that fight, and then he goes on the mic. You heard how the crowd turned against him.
Yeah, big time.
And then you've got Dana coming out, who talks about how great Colby is at running his mouth and blah blah blah, and says he looked like an old man in there. I think Colby's star's diminished massively, and I don't think it was a smart call out, which for Ian Garry is not normally something that he misses with. But I appreciate Colby's talked some smack, and Ian Garry I think just wants to put an absolute nail in him. But not for me. It's not a fight I'm interested in. I think it's more interesting at the press conference than the fight would be.
Yeah, probably.
I think Ian Garry would just piece him up.
Definitely. I think that's part of the game plan. I think he sees him as very beatable. The same way that Colby called out Wonderboy Thompson, right? He sees him as very beatable, a name, and also a number. Colby's got that number that gets Ian Garry into that top five, because that fight takes Garry to 8. Above that, he's got Gilbert Burns. I don't think this Ian Garry at the moment wants anything to do with Gilbert Burns. Then you've got Shavkat, Bilal, and Usman. Usman, we don't know what he's going to do. I don't think Garry would want anything of Usman either. So I think the division-wise, I think it's a smart call-out, because he's not going to want Sean Brady at 6. I wouldn't think. I think it's a smart call-out because it builds on his name a little bit more. I do think it is an easier fight for him, and it gets him that number. It gets him that number 5. Yeah, would it be competitive as a fight? No, it probably gets him. That's something that could headline Ireland, for example, if that's what you wanted to do next with Ian Garry.
Colby ain't going to Ireland.
Probably not. No. I mean, it'd be doing good to get out of the US, right? If, like you said, everybody booed him and stuff. But other than that, then who would you put Garry in there with next?
I mean, there's fights kind of lined up for these guys already, but he called out Wonderboy before. I think Wonderboy, okay, is older, but stylistically is a fun matchup with Ian Garry. I think he'd already got the fight booked with Luque, which obviously fell off, and that's kind of gone away. But the Luque fight was really interesting to me because Luque is quite grappler heavy, also capable of getting banged and doing the banging himself. So there's a little bit of everything there.
Yeah.
Sean Brady obviously has just come off a massive win. So Sean Brady, I think, he's He's beaten the number 11, or I think Magny was, then he's gone down to weight. Why wouldn't you go for 6 or 5? You know,
Mm,
Colby, okay, I get it. From a ranking point, great shout. Like you're saying, if you're trying
mm.
to get closer to that title, but you beat Colby, you're still going to have to take on one of the top contenders. That you beat Colby, that doesn't get you a title shot anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it's a real curious one, that one. Let's speak about a guy, you mentioned the word title shot, and somebody we definitely know what is and should be next. It's probably the winner of the week, right? Merab Cejudo. He's won the week, surely, in every sense of the word.
Well, I mean, I know John will watch and listen to this, but that's me 2 champions down now, probably. I
Yeah,
predicted Arnold Allen to be the featherweight champion by the end of this year. That all went tits up. And I also made a bold shout that Henry Cejudo would make his way back
would
to
come
gold.
back. Yeah,
Now, what I will say is, I think Henry Cejudo in that first round looked great.
yeah,
I thought he was landing hands for fun on Merab. I thought Merab looked a little clumsy off. You know, when they were fighting on the feet, I thought Cejudo's hands were pretty confident and pretty clever. And I think that Cejudo obviously had the edge there and obviously landed that left hook. I think it was kind of stumbled him back, but age waits for nobody, man. Was he 37 now?
yeah,
And
big time.
he looked like a phenomenal fighter that just can't do it anymore. And don't get me wrong, when I say he can't do it anymore, I think Henry Cejudo still beats 90% of this top 10.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think that Merab is undeniable right now. He is the guy to take the shot at the title. He is the number one contender. He was the number one contender. He has been the number one contender forever. But this was a solid performance. He struggled a little bit in that first round, but 2 and 3, he was just dominant. I mean, picking Cejudo up and carrying him across the cage. The thing is, everything Cejudo normally does well, the one person in that division that he couldn't do that against was Merab,
Hmm.
because Merab had the engine to beat him, the wrestling to beat him. When we talk MMA wrestling / grappling, and Cejudo's only key to victory really was on the feet, and Merab kind of took that away. But I thought it was a really good performance from Merab, and
Mm.
he's absolutely the next. And had Cejudo not clipped him, I would be saying that I was extremely confident that he beats the winner of Cheeto and Sean. But when Henry clipped him with that shot, I thought, oh God, maybe Sean could put his lights out.
Yeah,
You know, Cheeto, I'm not so sure, but Cheeto was a little more well-rounded, a bit rugged and rough. But I think Merab, we saw Sandhagen kind of beat Cheeto comfortably, and I
yeah.
think if
But
Corey could
quite a
do that,
grappling game.
I think Merab could just turn that into a grappling match and beat him quite comfortably. But Sean does have that knockout power, so it's an interesting matchup. It's stylistically how these guys line up, because I think Cheeto beat Sean, and I'm jumping ahead of Pod here, but I think Cheeto beats Sean. I think he's
Yeah,
got his number,
yeah,
but I think Sean beats a lot of people that Cheeto can't beat. it's just
yeah. That's
it's
the
just
thing.
MMA
It's that
maths.
video. It's the video that Merab made. Have you seen it where he's dressed up as like the weatherman or the news reporter?
Yeah, with the
It's
drawing
that
board
video.
and
It's exactly
uh,
that video. The irony is, and the funny part is, it is exactly that video. But that's not what's going to happen. I mean, he's made himself undeniable, Merab. He's made himself
yeah.
undeniable. You know,
Do you
I
know the only
I
thing that I
think
think maybe doesn't make him undeniable is if we end up with Cheeto O'Malley 3. So if something happens in that event to delay this, whether it's maybe I don't know,
could you
Sean's winning
imagine?
every minute of the fight and Cheeto knocks him out. We end up with O'Malley. We will do O'Malley Cheeto 3.
Give Merab another ticket in the line, boys. He's
Yeah.
still waiting. He's still waiting. Yeah, I think it'd have to be a split decision, surely, right? To get the third fight out of them two, if Vera did win it, because Sean O'Malley's not even defended the belt, has he? So it would surprise me. That's the only way, right? A controversial split decision would be the only way, I think. Yeah, Merab. I mean, I like his personality. It's the opposite with Topuria. I like his personality. I'm not massively keen on his fight style. It doesn't
Hmm.
do too much for me. I don't think he really pushed
No.
enough for a finish, and I don't know if he's got it in him, to be honest. I don't know. Is he going to finish
I
Sean
don't.
O'Malley? I think if he fought Sean O'Malley's weary enough to be able to survive on the ground. His jiu-jitsu, he'll just get held for a couple of rounds, and hope that he could do something in the start of every round. Yeah, Chito Vera, I just think he throws him around like Corey Sandhagen did, just sits on him. But I mean, I'm all
He's
here
very.
for Merab fight week, but not
I
fight
mean, you
night.
can see why Merab and Aljo are best mates, can't you? Because they meet up, they have a hug, and neither one lets go of the other. They just
Yeah,
walk around
exactly.
stuck to each other like bloody Siamese twins, or whatever, conjoined twins, whatever they are.
Yeah,
It just,
yeah. And I actually just saw just before we jumped on, I saw Ray Longo on, I think it was Anik and Florian, and he said that 2 days before the fight or a day before the fight, Aljo and Merab went 3-5s anyway.
mm,
How insane is that? How insane is that? I mean,
yeah, doesn't surprise me. I
mate, I
think
tell you what,
before we move on to another fight, mate, I think there's a couple of two things that I just want to talk about. Number one
go
is
for it.
three, in fact. Number one is when we talk about embedded and we look at all this sort of stuff. I think if Henry Cejudo had done what he'd done with the coach, and
Mm.
I wasn't really paying too much attention to exactly how that all played out, but keep getting that on camera. If he did end up getting rid of the coach, that was shocking.
Yeah,
That should have been off camera if that's what ended up happening. There was that much talk backwards and forwards. I got confused as to what was real and what was made up and what have you.
yeah, it was all a
The
bit weird.
second one would be that Henry Cejudo said he was going to retire. There was some people say he took the gloves off. I never saw it.
I've seen a clip
The
of that. Yeah,
UFC, the UFC didn't give him the mic mainly because Merab didn't shut up. Bit like me.
he
When
was
I
going
start
on
on
with
the
him.
mic, no one else can get a word in. But I think for someone like Cejudo, there's two ways of looking at this. Number one, my initial thought was if he's took his gloves off and they've not given him a moment in there, regardless of timing and schedule, that's disgusting from the UFC.
Mm.
And then there was another part of me that thought, well, that's why you don't retire when you've got no intention of retiring.
Yeah,
If anyone's a boxing fan that's listening to this, Shakur Stevenson's just retired. Teofimo Lopez, retired. Tyson Fury has retired more times than I've changed my knickers. It's it's just utter shit. It's not real. It's just for publicity, and that's all it is. And Henry did it because he wanted to get a big shot and some more money. And he stepped away. And the honest thing is, like, Henry Cejudo should be being talked about as the greatest ever around those weight classes. And had he stuck around, I think he would be. But he didn't. He
yeah,
disappeared. And now he's not considered that. And I think it just goes to show if you're in your prime and you're fighting at your very best, don't step away. Don't do anything stupid. Just run with it. Because he's missed out, in my opinion. He has got a legacy, but I think he's missed out on what could have been a far more phenomenal. He's come back trying to win this title because he wants to become undeniable at being one of the best ever.
yeah.
And he is one of the best ever. But he's not going to be talked about as being the best. And he could have been. But he
He
disappeared in
never
his
gets
prime
mentioned,
years.
does he? He never gets mentioned in those conversations. I think that's exactly why. Did you have one more point before I read out John's thoughts, and we just quickly do the first fight?
I did, but I don't know if it's gone. Henry's coach. Henry's stepping away. Yeah, I don't know. Just move on.
John said on Merab and Cejudo, shouldn't have retired and then come back. Yep. Merab is more and more likable. I knew this fight wasn't going to be boring. I beg to differ on that. It was only really Merab that made it fun. Merab needs a better finishing ability and a title shot next. So, opener of the main card. I mean, this is an interesting one. Fluffy Hernandez doing Fluffy Hernandez things to Roman Kopylov.
You know, I was going the other way with this one, mate. And when I saw Hernandez was opening as the favourite, I thought, I might chuck some money on Kopylov because I watched him last time out. He looked absolutely brilliant. He was brutal. He was devastating. Never really got going. I think the threat of the takedowns and the grappling prowess of Fluffy kind of just kept him reserved a little bit.
Yeah.
And as for Anthony Hernandez, he looked great, man. I'm so happy for him because he seems like such a such a fun guy, such a good guy. I want to see him get someone higher ranked. He deserves it. That was a big statement win. That to do it in the way he did, I've got nothing but admiration for him. I thought he was fantastic.
How does Anthony Hernandez, Paul Craig wet your whistle? I know Paul Craig's booked up, but that would be entertaining, no? That would be fun.
I don't like it for Paul Craig. Apologies for the Scottish elements of the Combat Sports UK team, but I don't like it for Paul Craig.
Yeah, just let Anthony Hernandez go and rip on Chris Curtis. I'd like that.
Mm.
Maybe
Yeah,
a
well, I
Delidze.
think he walks through Chris Curtis, to be perfectly honest with you. I think there's a few names on there that he beats comfortably. That's why I'm saying that kid deserves a big fight. Give him one.
Yeah, and I think you'll get one. I think he'll get a main event as well. He'll get a fight night main event, maybe an Apex main
Deserves it.
event. It's one of those guys, maybe Delidze, Curtis. It's odd what's happened with the rankings because somehow Hamzat Chimaev has fallen 2 places, obviously maybe because of
Good.
inactivity. Delidze has moved up one. He's at 9. Jacomanson's at 10. You've got Craig at 12, Curtis at 13, Chao Borralho, and then Anthony Hernandez. Somehow Chao
Yeah.
Borralho has moved ahead of Anthony Hernandez, even though he hasn't fought recently. I would imagine Hernandez will leapfrog him again. It's a bit weird, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they maybe not updated them, but either way, like you said, I think he needs to be looking top 10. Get him a top 10. Like you said, the Paul Craig ones, it's only because Paul Craig's coming off a loss, you kind of go, eh. But I think somebody 8 to 10, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, if the last Roman Delidze we saw, I think he runs through Delidze as well. I think he'd go through Delidze. He just seems to be somebody who's really enjoying his game, getting better with every fight.
Yeah.
And just looking
And he's
slick. I
took his
mean,
licks as well. It's not like, this is an undefeated young guy we're talking about. This is just a mature fighter that's improving.
yeah. And the dude's tapped out Rodolfo Vieira as well, who picked up a really impressive victory last time. Man, he's got some good names on his record, man. Shabazian, Barrio, Job's friend, Vieira. That's now what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fight win streak he's on. He's got a loss to Kevin Holland and Marcus Perez. He's beaten Brendan Allen as well. He's decisioned Brendan Allen. So,
which is just looking better by the minute.
Yeah, the future's bright for old Fluffy. The future's bright. So,
I think so.
Takes us to some very bright prelims, doesn't it?
It does.
So the first of the prelims that we have to dive into is Amanda Lemos versus Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern obviously stepping in on relatively short notice. What was it, about a month or something like that, after coming off a pasting from Jessica Andrade back in November. Looked like she was going to get another one in that first round, right? Looked nasty for her.
It's first thing that I want to say is massive credit to Mackenzie Dern for number one taking this fight, given the fact that she obviously had a tough time last time out. So jumping in late against Amanda Lemos is quite admirable. You could have forgiven her for kind of taking a little bit of time and working on some things. I think the most important thing to realise is that she has got things to work on still. She is evolving. She's got to keep working on those hands, whether it's with Perillo or another boxing coach. She absolutely has to keep working on the hands because she's just throwing from the hip to the sky. She's stumbling all over. She's leaving herself wide open to get clipped. We all know how good she is as a grappler. We've seen it. She showed stages of it in this fight. But on the feet, she's just not good enough. So she needs to stop trying to throw it like she's a certified banger. Play it smart, play it safe, play it a little clever. Get into grappling exchanges by ducking shots instead of trying to throw them and getting caught by something. Couple of different points for me. I thought Amanda Lemos looked decent, looked very dangerous, obviously, at points. Slightly concerning for her, I suppose, that she didn't close the show because, let's be honest, Mackenzie Dern was cooked. I thought, what's the referee's name? It's
I can't think who it was
right now. Bald-headed guy with a big beard.
Beltran.
Beltran. I'm sure
Yeah.
it was Beltran that was reffing this. And I don't know what he was thinking, mate. I don't know if he's got something against Mackenzie Dern. That fight should have been stopped.
Big
And
time,
Mackenzie
right?
Dern, again, deserves a fucking crazy amount of credit for sticking through that. But when a fighter falls back, laid on the back, and not covers the face defensively like this to avoid getting shots, but puts the hands on the face like this because it's hurt that much,
Yeah.
it's time to stop the fight. She's no longer at that stage intelligently defending herself. She's out. Her
Yeah.
brain checked out. But the fact that she was able to rally through it and survive, and the fact she even got to the end of the round, you saw her kind of giving it one of them, like she knew she felt like she'd won that round by simply surviving because
Mhm.
that's how much trouble she was in. And then she came out and the guts on her, man. Can't talk enough about her. The funny thing is we should be talking about Amanda Lemos, but the biggest takeaway for me is the stones, the hypothetical stones on Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah. Yeah. She was.
Um,
She brought it out, man. She brought. There's a dog. There's a dog in her, and there's some serious talent on the ground. It's just like you said, putting it all together. Was there like again? We should be talking about Lemos, but McDern's the one that comes out of it. Is there like a little illusion in that Jason Perillo period where she did actually get better? Think about the Angela Hill fight, for example. Like, has she just regressed since not having Jason Perillo in there, or like I can't? She's not obviously been able to translate those skills, has she? Really, since Perillo's left the
I think the
corner.
thing is, I think the biggest thing is that when you've got Jason Perillo, you can do everything you want in camp. But when the fire's on and you're in the kitchen and you're getting cooked, you need Jason Perillo there shouting, telling you what to do. Get the left hand up, take a
Mm,
step out, throw a double
mm,
jab, whatever it might be that he's shouting down to her. Keep the distance, whatever it's going to be. Perillo would do that. If Perillo's not there, it doesn't matter how much you've learned in camp because as soon as you get hit and you get hurt, that all goes out the window.
yeah.
If she was throwing those shots in the first round and launching them from all the way back here to all the way up here, Perillo would be saying, "What are you doing?"
You
You
would.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the difference, and not just Perillo, but any. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be Jason Perillo, but she needs a boxing coach because
Big
the
time.
boxing stinks. It does, and
Yeah.
I like Mackenzie Dern. She seems switched on. I think she is evolving. She is getting better. She is trying to become a mixed martial artist instead of just a grappler. But it's not one of those sports or games that you pick up dead quick. So it's going to take time, but she's only going to get better if she finds a boxing coach that she trusts, that she can rely on, like someone like Jason Perillo, who will help her improve the
Yeah.
element of a game that she needs to work on. Yeah, just I can't understand why the fight wasn't stopped. I do want to ask you, mate, how you scored it, if you recall,
Can I recall? Can I recall?
because I think you said the first round earlier, but I'm pretty sure, unless it was the early hours of the morning playing tricks on me, that it was the second round for Mackenzie Dern that was
Yeah.
absolute chaos.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
Because I
to be fair,
saw the
like I
reason I'm
said,
asking, mate, is because I saw plenty of stuff online with people talking about Mackenzie Dern winning this fight.
no, no, definitely not. Because I mean, I can't honestly. It was super early for me. I think it was the fight just before I got on the plane, and I got on the plane at 6 o'clock in the morning. So you can imagine what time I was up and going to the airport. And I think
Yeah.
I remember watching the third round as soon as I landed, I put my data back on because I couldn't download it because UFC Fight Pass it's so slow to download stuff. I put my data back on and I streamed it. And by the way,
Mhm.
UFC Fight Pass is a data terrorist if you want to know. And I streamed the last round, so I kind of caught it in bits and pieces in between sleep and the flight. But I definitely
Yeah.
didn't have Mackenzie Dern winning it. But I came out at the end of it thinking, holy moly, like whatever
Well,
round it was, whether it was the first or the second where she got absolutely destroyed, could have been a 10-7, 10-8, really, couldn't it?
this is the thing. I'll tell you how I scored it, and you won't be surprised to hear this. I gave it to 10-9 Amanda Lemos in the first.
Mm-hmm.
I gave the second round 10-8
Mm-hmm.
to Amanda Lemos, and only
Yeah.
one of the three judges did that,
Yeah. That's weird.
which for me was crazy because
Yeah.
that was over. That fight was over. And then I gave the final round a 10-9 to Mackenzie Dern. and that gave me a scorecard of 29-27.
Yeah.
And I think there was only one judge gave that. I think the rest went 10-9, 10-9, and 10-9 to Mackenzie Dern, so 29-28.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
thought
that.
that was insane. And then I saw people talking about Mackenzie Dern winning the fight, and I was thinking, what? What are you watching?
Yeah, there is no way. There's no way she takes that pasting and wins the fight. As for Lemos, I mean, is that Tatiana Suarez fight the one to get back? Is that the next one for her?
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, the biggest takeaway that I took from this was that Amanda Lemos can be dangerous to someone who's not ready. She ain't a
Yeah.
danger to Tatiana Suarez.
Yeah, I mean, has she done? Yeah, she's already lost to Jessica Andrade, so that's another one they could book to get her that one back, possibly if they want to keep her active, because
Well,
obviously we don't know
Andrade
how
is on
long.
300, isn't she?
Ah, she is. You're right. Yeah. So yeah, she's a bit tied up, isn't she? Really, unless
Hmm.
Suarez comes back quicker. She's a bit tied up. Let's jump down to the big boys. Marcos
Yeah.
Rogerio de Lima and Junior Taffa. Junior Taffa doing the brother thing and just stepping in playground style, last minute notice, only to have his leg chopped off and not be able to walk for a few
Well,
weeks.
I'm not sure Junior Taffa could have won that fight if his brother was in there with him. Um, I mean, that the biggest takeaway on this fight for me was this. Number one, Derek Lewis is a crazy man. That flying knee,
Yeah.
that's all you can think of, and that's all I'll ever put with De Lima. The biggest one for me, mate, the second round. So Junior Taffa basically crawls back to his corner because he can't walk. And I put a tweet out at the time, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but the corner said something along the lines of, "You need to stay on your toes." I thought, stay on his toes? He can't fucking walk. How's he supposed to stay on his toes?
Look
He
what
can
he
do it with a
left.
crutch. Never mind anything else.
Uh,
You know, he needs a third leg. He doesn't need a bloody to keep on his toes. He needs something to keep him upright. I mean, the kicks were nasty, but to kind of get taken apart by kicks like that, it was a bit reminiscent of the was it Rob Font and Adrian Yanez? No, it was
mm,
Jonathan Martinez and Adrian Yanez.
yeah, it was, yeah.
The way Martinez just kicked that leg of Yanez and just took it away from him. But I mean, Taffa was hurt instantly from it. There was quite a lot of fights on this card actually where there was significant leg damage.
Yeah, it was.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, you could see them on the shins. They were looking like some of the fighters looked like they got my head on the shin. You know, it was just a big, massive bald lump. But yeah, nothing too
Not
much to
pretty.
say on it, mate. It was a very limited skill fight, let's be honest. It was
Yeah.
exactly what we talked about when we talked about the Octagon MMA event, and we talked about the likes of Stuart Austin and people like that that are in there. Stuart Austin does both these in the same cage
Yeah. Yeah.
at the same time. You know, one of them's a ranked heavyweight in the UFC. It's crazy. It's just the
Yeah.
UFC heavyweight division sucks. Apart from
Yeah.
a few guys at the top, it absolutely sucks.
It
And this was
does.
a prime example of it, mate, because De Lima didn't look good. Tafford looked terrible.
Yeah.
I credit him for stepping in last minute, but I don't really want to talk about it anymore.
No, just one thing I will say, shout out obviously Stuart Austin, his two proteges fought last night on levels, Shah Kamali and Mario Pinto. Both those guys do both of these. And Shah Kamali had the flu, went in with fever. Rinya
Mm.
Nakamura gets the unanimous decision win over Carlos Vera. All I will say is if you see
Was it
anybody that
Carlos
comes
Vera or
from,
was it Ryan Hall?
oh,
Who
was it
was it?
Ryan Hall? Yeah. The ghost of
It
Ryan
was
Hall getting in there.
Do you know what, mate? I know that it was getting quite a lot of slagging off from the crowd and everything else, but Carlos Vera can roll, man. He
Yeah.
he looked great in that he got himself out of some serious trouble. I think my biggest takeaway from this one was that I think Nakamura is a real good fighter. I
Yeah.
think he's got stuff to learn, but he won that really, really comfortably without ever having someone actually stood in front of him, laid in front of him. Just the kid was just rolling all over the octagon for 15 minutes. And, there was a couple of little tight moments there where, they nearly sunk in. There was like a couple of those leg locks and he was looking constantly. I think there was a triangle attempt and a couple of
Yeah.
others, but
Yeah,
think he showed that
Nakamura was really good at just getting the knee out. He was really good at
I
clearing the
thought
knees
defensively he
quickly
looked
as he
good.
could.
That was my biggest takeaway. We've seen the rest from him, but I thought defensively in the grappling exchanges he looked solid. So good win for
Yeah,
him, I think. I know he
yeah,
was
I think,
upset about it, but yeah,
and I talked about it before.
the
If
fight
you,
sucked. Oh,
yeah, I mean, if you see anyone from that road to the UFC series, you know they're going to be good. You know they're going to be decent. So I highly recommend if anyone does get time, go back and watch those if you're looking for something to watch because those some serious contenders come off of there.
yeah,
Tatsuro Taira being another, is it Taira? Tatsuro Taira being another one who I've raved on about before. There's a few coming from this series as well that's just finished. Another Asian gets it done. Ming Yang Zhang completely goes through Brenson Ribeiro after having a bit of adversity himself. This was a matter of a fight, wasn't it? Jeez, for as long as it lasted.
yeah. I mean, he's probably sat at home disappointed, Sang, because obviously Alex Pereira's tied up now. But you know, it's quite the shout out. Again, I saw him getting a lot of hate, and even like Rogan in there was like, "We might be getting a bit ahead of yourself." And I thought, it's not really for you to say, Joe, for fuck's sake. The amount of shit you come out with. But I think Zhang is he looked great, and I think it was Sean Bitter put a thing out saying every second that passes when this fight continues will make me even more nervous or
Yeah,
something to that effect. And it was because of these two guys. You know, as soon as they both came out, they both started throwing hands. Ribeiro landed a big shot on Zhang, and Zhang went, "Oh, we're doing that, are we? Right,
yeah.
fuck off." Just bang, just wiped him out, and he looked great, mate, because he took a big shot, didn't flinch, and just absolutely smashed him to pieces, and that was that. It was a great knockout.
It was a banger royale. This is the only
And
fight I
again,
didn't see. Go on.
I was just going to say, you know, this is you were talking about before about the new age talent coming through in a light heavyweight division. It'll take this kid no time to get up those rankings.
Yeah, yeah. You only need a couple of fights in that division, especially if you go
You
on
do.
starching people like that. The only
Uh-huh.
fight of the night that I missed was this one, the Danny Barlow, Josh Quinlan one. What happened in there? Anything of note?
Yeah, I mean, Danny Barlow has nicked Jack Cartwright's haircut. Um, he's got he's got a very different figure than Jack and whatnot, but yeah, he's got a bit of a ponytail on the shaved head. But it was a good fight, this one, mate. To be honest, I thought Josh Quinlan showed a lot of heart. Danny Barlow shows a lot of promise. He's
Mm.
quite an impressive kickboxer or slash boxer. Predominantly uses the hands. Looked good in stages, but also looks suspect to getting clipped. I think someone better than Quinlan might draw something out of him, but he's quite a fresh face and he's got bags of potential. Yeah, it was a fun fight, and good matchmaking at this stage. Really good
Where is he?
matchmaking because these
Is he
two
a
were.
contender series? Yeah, he is a contender series.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe both of them came through, but yeah, it was a fun one, mate. You know, they both give each other a bit of back and forth, and it was a solid victory for Danny Barlow. He'll learn a lot from that, I think. But looks like
Mm.
a promising prospect moving forward.
Very
But
nice.
I suppose the next one for us to jump into, mate, is the Welsh gangster himself, Oban Elliott.
Oh, Ban
Um,
Elliott.
do you know what? Did you say you caught the rest of this card? It was just that fight you missed,
Yeah, that was the only
the
one I
last one.
missed. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was having a real hard time with this Anaheim crowd
Mm. They were odd.
because they were just booing everything. And like, Oban Elliott got quite a lot of shit I saw online, and you know, in the arena they were booing, and not really sure what more they wanted from him. Okay, he didn't get the finish, but he did everything to try and get it.
Yeah,
You know, he was
he was
constantly searching
relentless.
for submissions and then switching to ground and pound. And I look, when we talked about the Robert Whittaker fight earlier on, I said there was a fight on this card that was sort of reminiscent when we come to
Mm.
the scoring. And I scored this 30-27 for Oban Elliott,
Mm.
but he was hurt in the first round, and he
Big
was
time.
hurt
Yeah,
quite bad.
yeah,
But all the judges gave this a 10-9 to Val Woodburn.
yeah. So how
But
did they turn it around?
people make the same argument about Paulo Costa
Mm.
and say Robert Whittaker lost that round. So it's funny how it depends on the person, let's say, or people's conceived idea. But look, it wasn't his best performance, mate, and I think that comes down to, I don't know if you play golf, but I go out and play golf sometimes, and I'm not very good, and my old man is, and whenever I go out with him, he plays terribly because he's only playing to the level of me.
Right. Yeah.
Because I somehow managed to just suck him down to playing absolutely dreadfully. And I think that's what happened here. I thought Val Woodburn presented a threat with a power, but outside of that was pretty poor. And I think Oban Elliott, for all the dominance in winning the fight, kind of struggled just to get him out of there because I think his performance came down because of the level of his opponent. I guess that's a long way around the roundabout of saying, I think, a way of saying I think he will look a lot better against a better caliber of opponent.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's definitely that argument. Again, it's another one. You kind of do what you need to do because you don't want to stand and bang with Val Woodburn. I mean, the dude can take people's heads off.
Yeah.
So Oban's got a smart game plan in there. I think UFC debut as well. So you've got plenty of room to grow and plenty of room to improve. And he got the shine obviously from Chael Sonnen as well this week. So he's on he's on the way to being a bit of a name. He's definitely going to be on the radar of people moving forward. That takes him to 10-2. Very similar, it's not too dissimilar to his Contender Series fight. Got rocked pretty heavily and then kind of found his way grindily to a decision. But I agree with you with the crowd. I mean, he was trying to finish that fight. He was actively trying to finish that fight. And if it's not for Val Woodburn just kind of at times muscling his way out of those positions and out of those submissions, I think he does finish that fight.
I think it's as well, mate. Like when he was on the ground, Woodburn, and Elliott was searching for the submission. Number one, he ain't got a neck.
Yeah.
So that makes it hard. But number two, he wasn't really putting himself at risk in order to try and get out of the positions, which therefore limited the amount of opportunities for Elliott to actually jump onto something and catch something.
Yeah.
He just
Elliott had to stay active.
Tucked up, kept hold of the hands, just was basically just in turtle position. I think they even mentioned that on the comms at one point.
Yeah.
Because he was holding on to Elliott and Elliott couldn't let go and he couldn't move anywhere, he couldn't do anything. And it was just, well, if that's what you're up against, you're going to struggle to look good. But
Val,
like I said, other than getting clipped, I thought he won every minute of every round. For your UFC debut on a pay-per-view card, tick the box.
Got to do what you got to do sometimes. Yeah. And Val knows if he holds on to him and stops him from advancing or doing something, they're going to stand him up, which is where he wanted to be anyway. So, that's the way it is. I think that's why Oban went the way he did. I'm excited to see what's next for him. I think he'll do well in the UFC. I think he's got a lot of room to grow. Miranda Maverick, Andrea Lee. What did we think about this? I remember catching this one. I remember thinking, Andrea Lee just kind of looked out of place. She was doing that kind of, I'm going to stand two lengths out of range and throw punches and hope you don't come near me, basically. And then Miranda Maverick kind of found a way.
Well, that's your long way of going around what I was going to say. Andrea Lee did nothing.
Yeah, she did.
Simply put, Miranda Maverick just walked it. It was a cakewalk for her. There was no real threat there. There was nothing that really happened. Again, I'm pretty sure, I won't look at it because I'm not really bothered about this one, but I'm pretty sure I had this one 30-27 on my scorecards as well.
Yeah.
No, I didn't see anything that Andrea... Not only did she not do anything, but she'd quite comfortably lost the fight and just didn't push to try and do anything different. Where you come into a third round, you've lost the first two comfortably and you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
The only acceptable explanation. Sorry?
She's 7-2 now in her last 9.
Yeah, well, I don't see her
going
going...
on the bounce.
Yeah, I don't see her going 8-2, put it that way. If she's doing a fight like that.
She could be bounced out the not only the rankings but also the UFC with that. Was she
around the Maverick?
Really?
She looked good. There's nothing exceptional about Miranda Maverick, but she looked quite good. She looked quite comfortable. Yeah, it was a nice little victory for her. She didn't really do too much wrong. She's just fighting with someone that didn't want to engage, really.
Yeah, and I mean, at 125, are these? I can't seem to find that division. Where is it? Ah, there it is. Yeah, so Andrea Lee was in at 15. Jazz the Vicious at 14 beats both of them. Katie O'Neill at 13. If Katie O'Neill turns up, she beats both of them. Green Silver, I don't know too much about. Ariana Lipsky, yeah, probably could beat either of them. Tracy Cortez, probably, and then your Araujo, Reba, Silva, Barber. Unless Miranda Maverick's got a really steep improvement curve, I don't really see if she cracks anything further in the division. And Andrea Lee, I think, as I said, she's
Yeah,
7-2. I mean, that's her out. That's got to be her done. 4 losses on the trot. Not great.
it's tricky because like I'm watching her and I'm thinking everything she does is okay.
Yeah.
Miranda Maverick doesn't do anything spectacular, but it was enough to get the job done. She moves into the rankings. Fair play to her.
Yeah, I mean, she's already actually lost to Jasmine Jasdovicius, Erin Blanchfield,
Mhm.
Macy Barber. So to be fair, she's beat Gillian Robertson. So she's only really lost to, her losses are kind of getting bigger, getting better, sorry, over time. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see if she can improve. Any final thoughts on this card? Any thoughts also about UFC Mexico? John and I have got the podcast coming out later this week, but maybe just grab your thoughts as well while we've got couple of minutes.
Yeah, I mean, on this card, I mean, the standouts were obvious. You're looking at Robert Whittaker, Ilia Topuria, and Merab for me. Standout outside of that was probably Anthony Hernandez. I thought he looked great. I'm just flicking over to UFC Mexico now. Main event. Sorry, I understand why it's the main event because it's Brandon Moreno. As a fight, I'm not overly excited about it. Nothing, no disrespect to Brandon Royval, but I think we've seen this before. Obviously, Moreno picked up a quite quick victory, but I think this one will go a little longer just because I think Royval will have learned a bit from his fight with Pantoja last time out. But I expect Brandon Moreno to get this done quite comfortably. The only thing I would say is I don't want to see him get it done comfortably. I want to see him push and finish the fight. I think Brandon Moreno to get back at the title needs to do that. Just beating Brandon Royval doesn't do anything for him. And given the fact of how Royval lost to Pantoja last time out, Pantoja didn't look good. Won the fight, but didn't look good doing it.
Yeah.
And kind of went out to a points decision. I think if Brandon Moreno turns up and smashes Royval to bits, it really underlines that I'm next.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one. I think co-main, we've got Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. Ortega is always a threat from submissions. We saw it against Volk. Doesn't need to be winning a fight or even doing well in a fight. Brian Ortega can catch you. But I think the steam's gone out of Ortega. The break has probably done him good, but also a little bit Paulo Costa-esque. We don't see enough of him, and I think that'll bite him in the arse. I expect Yair Rodriguez to probably finish Brian Ortega in this
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
And then other than that, it's just littered with Mexican talent, really. I mean, just looking through the card, I'd hope to God that the Edgar Chairez and Daniel Lacerda fight actually gets to some kind of conclusion so those two don't have to think about each other anymore.
Yeah.
And then Chris Duncan is obviously in there against Manuel Torres. Interesting fight. Chris Duncan's the underdog there. I know you and John will discuss this further, but as an underdog, hard not to fancy Chris Duncan in this.
Yeah.
For me, I'm sure everybody stateside will look at this and say Manuel Torres has been out. He's got some knockouts. He's got this, that. Chris Duncan's a tough mother. I don't. If you don't finish him, he's a problem for you. So I think Chris Duncan might stick this one out. And then the only other one I'll mention is Raul Rosas Jr. Against Ricky Torquois. I think Rosas obviously last time looked great. I don't really have too many thoughts to give on it because I'm really struggling of where Raul Rosas Jr.'s level is.
Yeah.
Because I've kind of seen him get beaten and how to beat him, and I've seen where he's lacking. But then the kid came back and absolutely starched, his last opponent. So, interesting one. Zellhuber's on there. Zellhuber I always quite like watching, but needs to... I think he pulled the trigger and got the job done in his last one off memory, but I think he needs to start doing that a little bit more. Kind of has quite a lot of potential, but just, for me, don't pull the trigger enough. It was Yagos. Yeah, he got the submission against Yagos last time out. But if you look at before that, it's a couple of decisions back to back. Yeah, it's a decent card. It's just, it is what it is. It's a Mexican card. It's going to be a fun night. I think it'll be a fun atmosphere. It's exactly where fight night should be, in an arena full of people and fans and good atmosphere and selling tickets and all the rest of it, instead of that shit warehouse where they keep putting fights on.
Too right.
So yeah, I'm going to refer to that as the warehouse from now on. I won't mention the Apex from this point moving on. But yeah, it's a good fight card, mate. It's probably a good fun fight card, especially for the local people. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. That podcast will be out on Thursday, where John and I we butt heads over Chris Duncan, not going to lie. But it's a fun one. So Chris Duncan's interview is on the website. Thanks everybody for listening to our rather extended edition of the podcast, because there's just so much to talk about. Looking forward to the next fight nights, and obviously UFC 299 coming up in just a couple of weeks. We'll be there before you know it. Nathan, as always, mate, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, mate.
Enjoy being in the minority with me about Robert Whittaker. All right, take care, mate. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Cheers, mate.
Bye.